Back to the European Union and the deafening silence on the left about the Brexit debate. After sending out several search parties, I managed to track down two distinguished thinkers on the left prepared to debate the subject, and the result went straight to the heart of British democracy. Anthony Barnett is the founder of OpenDemocracy and is writing a book about the referendum. Gisela Stuart is a German-born Labour MP. Brought up in Munich, she now represents Neville Chamberlain's old constituency. She has observed the institutions of the EU through her past work on the European Convention, and I wanted to know what was her verdict.
There comes a point when you realise you're inside an institution that not only is utterly unwilling to change, it also seems to be institutionally incapable of moving away from its deep integration wish to create a United States of Europe. So as a result of that, it set up imperfect institutions, and the most imperfect of those at the moment is the single currency, the euro. And I find it stunning, absolutely stunning, that the left can watch 52% youth unemployment in Greece, 47% in Spain, 37%, I think, in Italy, have a generation of young people thrown on the heap of unemployment for the rescue of an institution which the elites knew when they're set up would not be working.
Anthony Barnett?
I'm not speaking as a member of the Labour Party. I'm on the left, but I'm not a member of the Labour Party. And I think the Labour Party is, the whole point about the rise of Corbyn is that it's an attempt to refuse and to reject that sort of passivity in the face of the consequences of austerity. And I just don't think they've got their head round what is happening in the European Union. So I agree with you. I have great respect for the fact you were in the Constitutional Convention process, I think, in 2003, 4, 5. And the EU is a shocking and profoundly undemocratic institution. But it does seem to me that because it won't work, there's some point at which this, it isn't viable. If it's not viable, then there's a way of saying, OK, well, we've got to change the way Europe is run, not by sort of, trying to reform it bit by bit, but it fundamentally is not going to work. If it doesn't work, it will be big consequences whether we're in or out. So my view is we should be in there and fighting the good fight.
You're absolutely right. It needs to change. There is a core of France, Germany and some peripheral countries who have a single currency, and in order to make it work, they have to deeply politically integrate. They will have to create democratically accountable institutions, a finance ministry, all the kinds of things which the countries outside, including the United Kingdom, have never accepted. Now, we either can have a managed process of that reconfiguration which allows the Euro countries to do that integration with democratic accountability, and it allows those outside to manage the withdrawal and say we move back to a trading relationship, or we keep sticking together, this economy isn't working, it will be damaged, and then we're going to have to restructure under conditions of some catastrophic event. I'd rather have it managed.
Can I barge in on this conversation? Really interesting. At the heart of it is democracy, isn't it? Can we have a democratic Europe? Anthony Barnett, you're saying that somehow this can be evolve if Britain remains in the European Union. Gisela Stuart, you're saying absolutely, in fact, the structures are so moribund, that's a hopeless cause, so let's get out. Is that where you both are?
No, I'm not for. I think we're both against the European superstate. To have a superstate, it would have to be accountable. You would have to replace the different nation states by a single state. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the peoples of Europe want that to happen. So I think a democratic Europe will emerge, which isn't going to have ever closer union in that political sense. But I think the European project is flawed and it won't work. The euro is showing that, and I don't think the euro can last. So we're going to face some kind of catastrophe the more they insist on it. The harder the fall will become.
But can I pick up, Anthony, on the euro point? The 1999 was that pivotal moment after which it was no longer possible to say, you could argue that you had a two-speed Europe. That was the moment when you had to accept there was a two-destination Europe. Because those countries who have the single currency require the European superstate to exist and to function. And I do not want to see mayhem. I want to see that Germany and France and the economies around there are successful. They have a single currency. That is really important. They now require structures, political structures, to support that. Whether, for example, for countries like Greece, it is right to be in there is another point. I don't think it is. So if you have the core, which has a single currency and becomes that superstate, and you have countries outside who relate to it in the way they did pre-1997, where you had relationships but not ones which aimed at political integration. And then we will have youth unemployment cut down across Europe.
I'm for ending the euro. I think that we could keep with the euro and that all countries should leave it simultaneously so their own currencies can float against a euro. So you have has it in parallel. Otherwise, I don't see any way around it becoming effectively, although the Germans say they're against transfers, it becomes a transfer to Germany. I'm speaking as a European, and as a European, I think that the euro is actually destroying Europe. And it has now become, instead of integrating, it's disintegrating. And the way out of this is in a European framework to say, OK, we tried, it doesn't work. Either, in order to work, we have to become one country. We're Europe, we're not one country. Underneath sort of Monnet's rather amazing and wonderful sort of method of gradual change, there was a kind of rather crude Marxist sense that if you get the economy right, the politics will follow. And that hasn't worked. And you've got to just say, OK, it hasn't worked. It was a noble cause. And we have to stay together in a different framework. So I'm not for abolishing the euro. Let's keep the euro controlled by France and Germany as the shared currency, and everybody floats their currencies against it. And then we can actually get full employment back across the south of Europe, which is obviously it is a humanitarian crime.
To overcome the ills which I think ought to be unacceptable, like youth unemployment. And the logical conclusion from that for me is to say, I wish the Eurozone well, but the United Kingdom should be out.
Gisela Stuart and Anthony Barnett outraged by the failure to debate democratic issues in this referendum campaign.